my name is Charles, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about how awareness solves problems. So a lot of people, right, we have habits. We have things that we don't want to do. Or good habits and bad habits, right? We have good habits and we have bad habits. And it's like, oh no, right? We have all these like, good habits and bad habits. All these behaviors that were like, these behaviors I want more of, and these behaviors I want less of. I want to eat less junk food. I want to work out more. I want to work harder. I want to socialize more. I want to have more fun. I want to do less of the drinking. I want to do less of this. I want to do less of the, smoking. I want to do less of the staying inside, doom scrolling, all that sort of stuff, right? We have the good habits and the bad habits. We're like, okay, these behaviors I want to exhibit more of, and these behaviors I want to exhibit less of. And that's very common for human beings, right? So really, we have a bunch of habits, and we're like, how do we increase, quote unquote, self-control? Now, why should we not solely rely on willpower? Because a lot of people, right, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I messed up and I failed. And I caved into doing that thing that I didn't want to, eating that junk food, doing this, right? And so they think that they are weak because their willpower failed them. They're like, oh my gosh, my willpower has failed. I failed myself. I'm a weak-minded idiot. What am I doing with my life? How could I fail this? Right? And the woe is me, cry face hits you and you're like, oh no, I failed. And that's just not the right way to go about it. That's just not going to work. Right? Let's say willpower is like a finite resource. Right? And if you're hungry and if you're tired and if you're lonely and if you're sad, you're probably going to have, yes, you can exhibit willpower. It's not impossible. But willpower in certain moments is not always going to serve you, right? Sometimes you may, you can strengthen your willpower. You can develop parts of the brain that are associated with greater sense of self-control and self-efficacy, and you can get stuff done. You can be like, I can will through it. But let's say you go through 6 months of will throughing, and then eventually you cave. And you're like, wow, I keep caving even though I have all this willpower. I was so good for 6 months of not drinking. And here I am drinking, let's say if the problem's alcohol. And so this is why we're going to use awareness. Because awareness is like the lazy man's helpful solution. And there's no need to put all the extra effort when you don't need to. So, how do I explain this? So most people think awareness just means you believe or you think you have an issue. That's not really what we're looking for. That's not the kind of awareness I'm talking about. I'm talking about, imagine this is your brain or this is your mind, whatever you want to call it. And when the thought pops up, right? I want cookie. Let's say you have a cookie addiction, right? Because that's benign. I just want a cookie. I want cookie. Cookie. I'm spelling cookie wrong, but just don't even worry about it. So, let's say your addiction's like, man, I want the cookie, right? The awareness, the lazy man's solution is actually just to do nothing about this. Just to, not like, oh, I have such a cookie problem. Oh my God, I gotta resist the cookie. When you have the thought, I want the cookie, you just see the thought. You just observe it. And so what you're doing is you're actually bringing attention to it, but you're doing it in an observational manner. You're not acting upon the thought, but you're not resisting the urge. If you're down on the couch, right? And your brain says, I want the cookie, right? It pops up, boop, I want the cookie. If you actually just sit there and watch the feeling arise and dissipate, just desire, just like most things, most feelings, like now if it's a looming thing, there's certain circumstances where you may need to actually go do the thing. But if you just watch the desire arise and pass away, it does with, like, it'll just pop up. And then at a certain point, the desire will just fade. Like, especially if it's something as benign as a cookie, where, like, I mean, you can do this for, like, a lot of things. Like, a lot of the time, you don't actually have to have self-control. Like, you don't have to. Too many people are, like, in this society are like, effort. I gotta really will it. And you're, like, battling in your head against the thing. But if you're battling against the thing and you're like, I can't, I won't, then you're still bringing it up in your head. You're still essentially keeping it in your awareness. All you really have to do is just, like, observe the thought. Like, the lazy man solution, do nothing about it. Like, just watch the thought pop up, be like, I want a cookie. And just sit there and do nothing. And just sit there wanting the cookie. And what'll happen is the thought will arise, you'll want the cookie, and then at some point it'll just fade. Like, you'll just stop wanting the cookie. Your brain, like, won't, if you don't force the desire to stay within your consciousness for a super long period of time, eventually it just fades and you're like, I guess I don't want the cookie. Like, it'll just go away. Like, you don't have to continue, like, fighting it, saying yes to it, saying no to it. You kind of just let it pop up, discern, like, not the right thing to do. And then you just watch it go. And it's like the lazy man solution. And that awareness, like, at least from what I understand, and I can link the YouTube video that explains it, Dr. K, like a famous Harvard psychiatrist or whatever, in like Healthy Gamer GG, basically mentioned a study where it's like the part of the brain that deals with that awareness, like, what is a habit? Like, if anyone's questioning, like, how do you know that works, right? What is a habit? A habit is something you do unconsciously, right? You're not aware. So habits are unconscious. So the part of the brain that deals with, like, the conscious, or, like, is essentially the same part of the brain that deals with, like, the awareness. So if you're conscious of the desire, right, the more consciousness and the more awareness you bring to it, like the lazy man solution of just, like, watching the desire for your cookie pop up in your head, you're debating, do you want the cookie? And if you just don't engage with it, you just see it like, I want the cookie. Interesting. And you just sit there in the uncomfortable feeling. Guess what happens? The desire just passes. It could be 5, 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't matter how long. It'll just pass. Because that consciousness is the same part of the brain that is, like, the self-control. So you're not actually having to use willpower to, like, force it out of your head or change the way you're thinking. You really can actually just sit there and do nothing. Like, in essence, you can sit there, do nothing, and bring consciousness to whatever, like, habit or thing you don't want to have, and it'll actually solve the problem. Like, there's a lazy man solution that still solves, like, your self-control problems or your bad habits. And it's a lot easier than you'd imagine if you just use the slower, like, lazy man solution than, like, forcing yourself with tons of willpower. So I hope that helps. Enjoy being lazy and successful. Much love to you all, and talk to you later.